Hi, I am Dr. Gaetano Morelli, and I am privileged to be the Chief Medical Officer at Altasciences. We are all too familiar by now with the talk of the COVID pandemic. Few, if any, have been able to completely bypass the realities of the past 20 months. We have all encountered isolation, being shut in and separated from friends and family, fear of disease, fear of financial instability, issues in caring for loved ones or getting our children through school and through life, being precluded from doing what we enjoy, and a general pervasive angst that things may never return to a true pre-COVID normal. All this adds up to perhaps the greatest stress pandemic of our lifetime. For the past 20 months, as a medical practitioner in a university hospital setting, taking care of COVID-infected patients in hospital wards and ICU, I have witnessed the devastation of what COVID can do. I have witnessed the loss of old and young, the sick and the healthy. I have witnessed the heart-wrenching loss of a young, healthy, unvaccinated father and mother dying within a period of 2 weeks of each other, leaving behind 4 teenagers to face life as orphans. This is the reality of COVID. The reality of things is that getting vaccinated and reducing COVID numbers is essential. If there is one take-home message from this session that I hope you will hold on to, it's that COVID takes lives, vaccines save lives. To this point, a couple of weeks ago, we reached out to you to send in questions or concerns you may have around the whole vaccination program. The response was tremendous. One thing stood out. Many of you shared the same concerns. I would like to address these questions and concerns during this session in a question-response format.
I'm nervous about this vaccine. Isn't it typical for approvals to take much longer? Is there any data on long-term effects of these vaccines?
Yes, it is true. It seems they were developed quickly. However, the technology for the processes have been developed and tested for many years. No corners were cut on testing for safety and efficacy. What was compressed to save time were the administrative phases of carrying out clinical trials, not the phases dealing with ethics and scientific integrity. It was the pandemic that made it possible to accelerate global development, recruitment of the brightest scientists and best talent, and execute on clinical trials. Most often, there are never many opportunities to recruit patients into vaccine trials. To observe a difference between a placebo group and the vaccine group, there needs to be a significant risk of infection, as in a pandemic. If the virus isn't circulating, or only a little, that becomes difficult. Most of the potential long-term side effects of any vaccine are typically seen within the first 2 months of vaccination. To date, over 6 billion people have safely received at least 1 dose of the COVID vaccines.
What is the basis for recommending COVID vaccination to those who already have antibodies to the virus from infection?
A recent study published in August of 2021 indicated that if you had COVID before and are not vaccinated, your risk of getting reinfected is more than 2 times higher than for those who were infected and got vaccinated. While evidence suggests there is some level of immunity for those who had COVID, it is not known how long you are protected from getting COVID again. The level of immunity provided by vaccines after COVID infection is higher than the level of immunity for those who had COVID but not vaccinated.
It seems that the protection decreases after a period of 6 months. Should the population not get a 3rd dose?
There is also evidence to suggest that the level of immunity in fully vaccinated individuals may decrease from the high 90s to the low 70s after 6 months. We do not know what the significance of this truly is and whether the risks of infection increase. However, there are now recommendations for a booster shot in more vulnerable people. We await final recommendations from experts in public health on any program to inoculate the whole population.
Vaccinated people also test positive and transmit the virus or are hospitalized. Does this prove that the vaccines are ineffective, especially against the Delta variant?
Vaccines reduce the risk of transmission by more than 80%, and reducing the risk of transmission helps reduce the risk of virus spreading. When we observe the correlation between breakthrough cases, that is, in those that have been vaccinated, and the hospitalizations, ICU admissions, and mortality, there is a clear reduction with the variant. There will always be breakthrough infections, and some will experience serious complications and even die. No vaccine is ever 100% effective. COVID vaccines are some of the closest we have to being 100% effective. So the more people are vaccinated, the more we will be able to block this virus and prevent its spread.
Women are reporting that their menstruations have been imbalanced following the vaccine. Does the vaccine impact hormones?
There are now published observations regarding transient menstrual changes after receiving the vaccines. Evidence supports the fact that these transient changes are from the intense immune response produced by the vaccines, similar to an acute stressful situation. The changes are transient and no long-term effects have been reported.
What do we know about the effects of the vaccine on pregnancy, breastfeeding, and fertility?
The vaccines are recommended and shown safe in pregnant women. In fact, pregnant women who get COVID are at a higher risk of severe illness, complications, and death compared to non-pregnant women. Over 300,000 pregnant women have received the vaccines in the USA with no safety concern to the mother or fetus. Breastfeeding mothers are safe to get the vaccines. COVID vaccines do not contain live virus, so this does not pose a risk to the baby. In fact, data suggests that vaccinated mothers breastfeeding will pass protective antibodies in the breast milk to their babies. There is no evidence that COVID vaccines affect fertility. Confusion arose when a false report surfaced on social media saying that the spike protein on the coronavirus was the same as another spike protein involved in the growth and attachment of the placenta during pregnancy. The two spike proteins are completely different, and getting the vaccine will not affect fertility.
I have a family member diagnosed with autoimmune hepatitis. I want her to get a vaccine, but she's afraid. What is the status of autoimmune hepatitis or exacerbations post-vaccine?
First of all, I would suggest that your family member discuss her situation with her treating physician. This is always extremely important. Of note, I'm a gastroenterologist and a liver specialist. There have been some reports of adverse effects from the vaccine on the liver, including autoimmune hepatitis. However, studies have shown that people affected with liver disease have a much higher complication rate and mortality if infected with COVID. Unless there is a particular contraindication, I have been a strong advocate to get my patients vaccinated.
I'm afraid to get the vaccine and I'm looking for other options. Can you give me your opinion about ivermectin as a prophylactic and for early treatment?
To date, any medication that has been delivered to fight COVID has been in the context of clinical trials or as a last desperate effort. There is no certain evidence that receiving ivermectin during an infection has any effect. In fact, there are some reports of worsening outcomes. Definitely, ivermectin has no indication as a prophylactic drug and may indeed cause more unexpected harm.
My husband refuses to take the vaccine as he does not know the long-term side effects. What can I tell him?
If there was a healthy lifestyle that allowed you to fight against such an aggressive virus as COVID, we would have experienced or observed it. Unlike the cold virus, COVID attacks the deepest part of the lungs, resulting in severe inflammation, respiratory failure, and can lead to death. Being in good health allows you to resist the infection longer and more strongly. But no matter what age or how healthy, if you end up in the ICU, it isn't any better than having had a poor lifestyle.
Some of the objections I hear include, I'm never sick, I never get a cold, so my immune system is strong enough that I do not need a vaccine. People get sick, even autistic, as a result of vaccination. People have died after taking the vaccine. How can one refute these arguments?
Vaccine side effects are definitely not more dangerous than the disease. No epidemiologic or biologic studies done over the years have ever found any evidence to support claims that vaccines cause autism. How can you be afraid that a vaccine will do something worse than the virus you're trying to fight? You may have heard the expression, there are no atheists in foxholes. But one of the last requests I often hear in the ICU before a patient is put on life support is, "Doctor, please, can I get the vaccine? Vaccine now, please." Remember, COVID kills, vaccines save lives. If you are young and get a very serious side effect such as myopericarditis or thrombosis or hospitalized, then yes, in that case your side effect is more serious than what COVID might have done. But this is extremely rare. Let's remind ourselves that more than 6 billion doses of the vaccines have been administered. The most common transient side effects within the first 3 days have been pain at the injection site, fatigue, muscle aches, chills, fever, and some diarrhea. Any medical product can potentially cause a serious side effect. Unfortunately, that's the downside of any effective medicine. The fact of the matter is that the majority of people are happy to receive the vaccine. Of those that are hesitant, we have less than 5% that are vaccine deniers. These individuals have no intention of ever getting vaccinated, and you are very unlikely to change their minds. We have 10% who are vaccine refusers, and although the probability of change of mind is low, they are open to listening. However, there are 25% who are vaccine hesitant, who are concerned, and the point of our discussion today is to empower you with the knowledge and arguments. In closing, I would like to say, for most of the 20th century, more than 60,000 people died in the US from polio, diphtheria, smallpox each year. Around the world, 2 to 3 million deaths from these diseases, including measles, rubella, tetanus, are prevented each year. These statistics are a triumph of medicine and the global vaccination programs. COVID-19 now is joining the list of fatal diseases that can be easily prevented with a shot in the arm. This pandemic alone has killed over 3 million people and continues to devastate lives and families. Sadly, there is still a lot of unfounded misinformation surrounding COVID vaccines, which threaten the success of vaccination programs and allow this pandemic to continue. Thank you for your questions and your attentions. Should you have any further questions or concerns, please feel free to contact me or any Altasciences physicians. All exchanges will remain 100% confidential.